Welcome to the Cosmic Intelligence Briefing with Tom Garland. We explore the energetic, cultural, and astrological patterns that shape our collective experience. Logic leads us, light guides us, and community connects us on this journey of deeper patterns and higher perspective. Tom Garland is a metaphysical advisor, astrologer, and systems thinker. His work integrates Western and Vedic astrology with technology, economics, and philosophy. Each month, Tom offers an in-depth cosmic intelligence briefing, exploring patterns that shape our world. We embrace two paths: logic, focusing on reason, systems, and evidence, and light, rooted in intuition, symbolism, and energy. All perspectives are welcome in this conversation. Engage with curiosity, share observations, and respect all ideas in the chat. This video is produced in partnership with the Academy of Logic and Light, which creates accessible content to bridge logic and light. Co-host Julie Christine supports the live experience as community liaison, gathering your questions and themes throughout the video. We believe in two paths, one conversation where all perspectives are welcome. We bridge logic and light, building community and expanding consciousness together. Enjoy the show, and feel free to share your questions and where you're watching from in the chat.
Hello, and
Hello.
welcome back to another episode of the Cosmic Intelligence Briefing. And I'm Julie, this is Tim, and we are excited to be here today. Welcome.
Yep, exciting.
Lots of hyper energy right now.
Oh man, we were just talking ahead of time, and the clients that are coming in right now are running hot right now. There is a lot happening in everybody's life and making sense of it all. It's pretty poignant right now.
Yeah, I'm noticing some interesting themes, and I was wondering if you were noticing any themes, but a lot of stuff around like family wounds, old like paradigm stories that they're letting go are some of the themes I'm noticing. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
if
mean,
you know
you could go back to the February Saturn Neptune, right? And so that didn't just happen on the 19th and we're done, right? It's dissolving old structures, right? Seeing through illusions, family wounds, letting things drop away and not have so much attachments to the suffering that those things have caused us throughout our life. So absolutely. And it's happening macrocosmically as well. I mean, look at what's going on the planet. Everybody's starting to see through it. I mean, not everybody, of course, but definitely there's an acceleration happening.
Yeah, it's evident, and it's nice again to have these sort of places we can come to and feel kind of supported in the chaos, because sometimes you feel like you're kind of losing your mind. It's just every time you turn on the news, it's weirder.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think our little come-togethers are like, let's get in the helicopter and let's fly up above the forest and let's see what's really going on. Exactly.
Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm glad that we're here, and thank you for imparting us with your wisdom.
Oh, geez. Oh, yeah. I mean, we got a lot to cover because, there's been some pretty hefty, significant months this year, which we all knew was coming in, but we're kind of at the culmination point. After we get through August, there's not going to be as rare, significant goings on in the cosmos. We're going to start to get back to regular type astrological hits that we get, but all the big movements have happened. The big outer planets have moved into their little positions over the last couple of years and have moved into signs within 9 months of each other. All these things are hugely rare. And so when we go into August, the eclipse season is kind of the, as we're kind of calling it here. I mean, last month we called it the calm before the crossing. Okay. And so, when we're talking now is that the crossings arrived, right? And so we're here and we're in that we're in that eclipse season window. We're in, the new moon happened on the 14th. So we're in that 28 days that takes us to the eclipse. And yeah, there's a lot to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get to it.
Okay, let's get to it. All right. So so the crossing arrives. Now, I have a little subtitle there, a shadow over the crown. So we're going to get to that. All right. But really the crossing, it's no longer, ahead of us here. It arrives tomorrow morning. Okay. Now, just to kind of encapsulate what we're going to talk about today. So the next thing that the sky is going to do when we get into tomorrow, and that's, after that achieving perfection in a sense in the sky, there's going to be a shadow that's cast over the crown. And we'll get into what the crown kind of is and what it's about. So the shadow crosses on August 12th. Okay, that's the date of the first eclipse. And, August 15th, 3 days after that totality, we're going to come back together on this channel. And we're going to go together and read together what's revealed from that eclipse, right? So I think we're scheduled on August 15th. And we'll get into what happened. I mean, usually with an eclipse, things happen within the first 3 days before to 3 days after. That's usually the major eclipse energy window. And so we'll get to talk about what might have been revealed as we go towards the final eclipse towards the end of the month. So lots to talk about. All right. So this is kind of the helicopter view, if you will, of what we're going to be hitting over the next, I'd say, month and a half. Okay. We're at the middle of July, a little bit past that. And we're kind of looking out a bit till September. We're not going to talk a lot about what happens at the next eclipse until we get to the next show, but there's plenty to talk about, believe me. So, okay. So and again, if you saw the last time we were together, we talked a lot about this grand lattice, this grand sextile. People call it Barbo's bucket or basket or what have you. Okay. And it's been talked about by a lot of astrologers out there on YouTube. And just in summary, what it is you have the outer planets, which you have to sit here and really think about how slow these planets move in relation to us. And for them to actually come into these sacred geometrical angles and they all line up at the same time. I mean, it's just out of control. I mean, you're going to have outer planets trine each other, sextile each other, square each other, oppose each other. And those don't happen very often. But to have them all hit at certain points at the same time, I mean, like we said in the last video, it was like 6,000 plus years ago. And so this is kind of a convergence of energy, right? So we have Pluto at 4 degrees Aquarius, Neptune at 4 degrees Aries, Uranus at 4 degrees Gemini, Jupiter at 4 degrees Leo. And starting tonight, the moon moves into Libra, which is kind of clicking into place with all of these outer planets that have been slowly clicking into place over the last several months. Okay. Now, it's almost like, as we talked about, there's instruments getting calibrated and an orchestra is about to kind of make a hit here. And tomorrow morning, at least on the Pacific daylight time, it's about 5:20 a.m. The moon clicks in at 4 degrees Aries and kind of completes this really interesting lattice. So, whatever you're doing, if there's time that you're going to be able to be somewhere and just be in a place of presence and feel into the energy, I that's what I'm going to be doing. So do what you need to do. Okay. Now, after that, you kind of get to the 27th, which you've got here in the second part. And that's when the lunar nodal axis clicks out of Virgo and Pisces and moves into Leo and Aquarius. And that's a huge transition. It takes 1.5 years for this to happen normally or usually. So when it's clicking in at this time, with everything else going on, there's something to this. Okay. And here's the thing. It's clicking into the sign of Kings. All right. The South Node K2 is clicking into Leo. Right. Now, Leo's the sun's own sign. And, it's the king. It's the sovereign individual. And it's what's the sun? It's the thing that everything else orbits around. And what's opposing it, where the North Node is, okay, Aquarius, this is, traditionally ruled by Saturn. And what's Saturn? It's the exact opposite of the sun. The sun and Saturn are like oil and water. So if you've got the king on one end, you've got the commons on the other side, the masses, right? The laborers, the structure that outlasts really any individual. And so this axis is literally like one versus many kind of energy clicking into the next 18 months. Now, you got the crown on one side, the crowd on the other, right? And even Aquarius is kind of the water bearer, right? And that's like a figure kind of like pouring out to everyone versus kind of like hoarding the water, like say the throne would. And so, yeah, Leo's the figurehead, Aquarius is the network, right? Leo is kind of that centralized charisma, Aquarius is decentralized systems. And so, what is that? Like the collective, the committee. And so that's kind of where this shift is, where everything's going to start to become a different kind of message as we go into August. And then we hit that August 12th, where we have the eclipse. We'll get into that. And then there's kind of this clarity check, which is the next eclipse, right? Or right before the eclipse. That's the Mercury Cazimi. That's when Mercury conjuncts the sun. And then we kind of get to some later things that, again, we'll talk about next time and dial that in more. But it's the 31st is really that bedrock date. That's a Jupiter trining Saturn. Again, 2 slow moving planets. Okay, something like this doesn't happen very often. And there is this interesting, let's ground something that brings us joy from within, right? Let's take this expansive faith and optimism of Jupiter and let's ground it into place. Okay, so that's kind of the overview of what we're talking about here. So let's get into this eclipse that's coming up. All right, or I'm sorry, let's get into first it going into the 2 different signs. So if anybody knows, there's a ton of mythology about Rahu and Ketu, the North Node and the South Node. So Rahu is the head of the dragon, head of the serpent, and it's a severed serpent. And there's a whole mythology story behind all this. And when you think about the head of a serpent, it's considered hunger that never fills. So when astrologers talk about Rahu or the North Node, there's a hunger, there's an obsession, there's a need to go and get something, and it's never enough. You always want more and more. And the tail is usually that which releases. Okay, so K2 is the tail of the dragon or the tail of the serpent. And so it releases, it dissolves, it's letting go of, it's moving away from. So astrologers always talk about this axis in your chart. K2 is usually where we've been coming from, what we're comfortable with, what we need to let go of. And Rahu is what we're working towards. And it's usually freaking scary. Rahu can represent like the jungle kind of energy. It's scary. It's a roller coaster ride. We typically in our life we need to move towards this. We need to evolve towards this. That's why we're here in this lifetime. And a lot of times it's scary and we fall back into our comfort zone and we go back to where K2 is, but that's supposed to dissolve. All right. So the head is in Aquarius. Rahu's in Aquarius. So the hunger is moving more towards the collective, networks, future roles. And the tail's in Leo. right? So there's a release of some identity, visibility, kingly kind of archetype. So this eclipse is different because it's an eclipse, a total solar eclipse. So you have the moon in front of the sun. It's a new moon. And it's with K2 in Leo. So in a sense, the sun's being extinguished in its own sign. And it's a dissolving energy. Okay. It's not, we have eclipses where the sun's with Rahu. Okay. So the sun is with K2 this time. And then you can get into the nakshatras, the lunar mansions, from ancient Vedic astrology. And this is happening in Ashlesha, which you always want to measure sidereally. So Ashlesha is technically not where the sun's going to be tropically, but you always want to look at it where it is sidereally. And Ashlesha, funny enough, is the serpent's coil archetype. So there's a sense of entanglement and secrecy and shedding skin type energy that's happening. So that kind of kicks us off. And then another thing I want to bring up that maybe a lot of people don't know about, and this has to do with, it's kind of an ancient thread. All right. So there's something called the Saros cycle, the Saros series that was discovered by, and I'm trying to remember, it's Bernadette Brady, wrote The Eagle and the Lark. And this is completely brought up in there. And they actually go into all the different Saros cycles and what the chart was of the original eclipse for the cycle. So what is a Saros cycle? It's a family of eclipses. All right. There is about 72 per cycle, and there's one every 18 years and 10 days. And so they all kind of descend from a parent eclipse. There's like the first eclipse of the series. And every 18 years and 10 days, you get another eclipse that's based off of the first one. So they all kind of descend from one parent. And there's, and each member that comes in every 18 years and 10 days, you get this founding theme, and it just shows up in a different part of the chart every time. Right. So it's kind of like, like from an IT perspective, computer perspective, you have the same source code, right? The original source code from centuries ago that still plays out in the current eclipses. So this family that we're working with this time, it's about escape, okay, out of like a stuck, hopeless situation and into a field of open options. And there's one condition. So when you're shown the exit, when the cosmos shows you the exit, you take it. You don't hesitate. And so as I'm saying these things, think about what's going on in your own lives. Think about what's been happening, what's been unfolding and evolving in your life or in the lives of people around you. And you're probably seeing this in one form or another. So the first one was the founding chart of March 17th, 1179. And so I've got the chart here on the screen. I'm using the Southern Indian style chart. I think it's a lot easier to just look at versus a big circle with a bunch of lines and whatnot. And just so everybody's aware, if you could see my mouse, the Southern Indian style chart is a fixed sign chart. So Aries is always right here, then Taurus, Gemini, and so on and so forth around all the way to Pisces. And this line right here is the ascendant or the rising sign. So the moment that the actual eclipse happened on that day back in the day. Okay, so if you take a look at it here, what you're going to see is you're going to see the eclipse itself in Pisces, the sun and the moon there. And it's kind of in the last degrees of the sign. And what is Pisces? It's the last sign of the zodiac. We're talking about endings, disillusion, the closing of a very long story. And the big thing about this chart, we don't have to spend a bunch of time on it, but you have Saturn and Pluto very close together, about 2 degrees together in Gemini. And so Pluto is about sometimes being stuck and welded to an identity. Pluto can represent the ego, the survival, the basic raw instinct that we have inside us. This is why people think of Pluto as the underworld. It's that deep part of us that drives us, and it's usually ego-based, and it can bring power dynamics and manipulation and whatnot. And so there's a belief that you might be trapped in this kind of energy when this eclipse happened. And the trap is really who you are. And so Pluto's job is always to kind of burn things down to the ground and rise like a phoenix out of the ashes. And so it is kind of about shattering false identifications. And so with Saturn conjunct Pluto, you've got this, and again, they're squaring the actual eclipse. And squares are always about friction. And so this is kind of this, I've learned this recently. Saturn is like the parent mind. It's telling us what we're not supposed to do with certainty, whether it's right or wrong. And so with Pluto and Saturn conjunct, there's this is how I'm supposed to live, like this block. And it's just, you're welded into this trap. And so, and it's in the fourth natural third house. So let me kind of move on here to Mercury. Mercury's right next to the eclipse, but it's not next to it to where it's combust. So it's out of the glare of the eclipse here, but it's still in a place of debilitation in the sky in this chart. So there's options that are present, but they're narrow. And there's really only a few doors. There's only a few choices that Mercury can try to make here with all this blocked energy with Saturn and Pluto. All right. So that the energy here is, we need to choose fast. And, Venus is in the chart by itself. It's in its own sign. It's dignified. It's unafflicted. It's delighted where it's at. So there's kind of this grace that you've got with Venusian energy, and that, there's a desire to change, and there's a desire to go out and make something happen to nourish the soul. And so that's really the foundation of the eclipse that we're going to have, that goes all the way back to 1179. So to kind of go back, the last one in the cycle before the one we're about to have on August 12th was in 2008 in August. So that was about 18 years ago and 10 days. And so that was the last eclipse that kind of carried that energy from 1179. So most of us were around in 2008. What was going on in 2008? Right? There's, you kind of had the, we did have Russia invading Georgia, one of its old Soviet Republic partners. And it was kind of the first European war of the century back then, and or back in the early 2000s. And you also kind of had, you had the Beijing Olympics going on. We've got the World Cup going on. We had Obama accepting the Democratic nomination before that in August. And then, of course, we had the signs of the Great Recession. There were things coming out of the woodwork about the mismanagement of the financial systems of this country, and which, followed with a huge bailout, and the government starting to take some huge controls in our country. So that's kind of the basis of what was happening. And I would say, before we kind of go into this next eclipse here, think about it. Go back to 2008 even. What were you trapped in at the time? What doors opened at the last moment for you? Think about what pattern was moving back then. And that pattern's knocking right now, in a sense. but it's 18 years more mature. All right. So what we're kind of at here is that everything, when you have an eclipse, there's, it's a shadow. So everything the shadow is going to touch is going to get asked the same question right now. And it's, was this ever solid? So if you think about, we've always, any object out in the world that we're perceiving, we perceive it a certain way. And an eclipse comes and a shadow is cast, you're seeing that thing in a different light. I mean, I guess pun intended. And so there's questions to be asked, and you don't have to just ask them in the moment that we're having them right now. You can go back to 2008 and you can kind of see a pattern and again, how it's going to play out now. So this is the sky on August 12th. And so what you're going to see here is a Scorpio rising chart, which is ruled by Mars. And Mars is over here in the 9th house of higher belief, higher purpose, higher meaning, belief systems, religion. Mars is always about, I need to do this. I need to take action now, or else I won't survive. And in Cancer, Mars is in its weakest place in the sky. It's debilitated in Cancer. So actions will be taken. And they'll be taken in the sense believing that from a higher level, this is what I need to do. But we really got to be careful. Is it really what you need to do? Will you die or not survive otherwise if you don't do something? Okay. Now, the actual eclipse is in Leo, as you can tell, and there's a huge stellium happening in here. All right. We've got the sun, moon, and the south node K2. That's the eclipse right there. But you've also got Jupiter and Mercury fairly walking together pretty closely. So as we know, K2 just entered Leo. We just talked about that at the end of this month, at the end of July, it just enters Leo. So this is kind of our first eclipse that's going to be in this axis over the next year and a half. When we we usually have 2 sets of eclipses a year. So now here's the interesting thing. All the outer planets, Neptune, Uranus, and even Pluto to a degree, they're not getting aspected that much in this chart. Okay. They're around. They're not really touching the eclipse degree itself at around 20 degrees Leo. Okay. All these outer planets that we just discussed, they're all around 4, 5, 3 degrees at this point after that grand sextile we had. They're all kind of starting to break apart a little bit. So they're not really touching the eclipse. So they're not as much involved. These heavy hitters are kind of sitting this one out. So, and then you go back to Mercury and Jupiter. Okay. It just stations direct on July 23rd. So we've got about 5 more days, 6 more days until we're out of this Mercury retrograde. So when we get to this eclipse, Mercury is going direct, but it's a young walking Mercury. It just kind of started going direct, and it's walking with Jupiter. And so Mercury is options. Mercury's experimenting, trying things, doing things, and going, you know what, if this doesn't work, I'll try this. And Jupiter has this faith and optimism energy. And so the options are going to exist coming into this eclipse for people and for these collective situations that are going on around the planet. And then pretty soon after this eclipse, on the 27th, you're going to have the Mercury conjunct the sun. And it's actually going to conjunct when they're in Virgo, not even in Leo. And that's actually, Virgo is the sign of Mercury. It's where Mercury is exalted. So that's interesting. We'll talk about that next time. So the eclipse is kind of a door opener. And 2 weeks later, on the lunar eclipse, you're going to be able to read what's actually on these doors clearer. So the eclipse is kind of opening the options up. And when we get to the cazimi and the actual eclipse, the lunar eclipse, it's going to ripen these options. Now, Saturn's in Aries. It's trining the eclipse. It's offering structure. It's not imposing structure. You know, Saturn's actually pretty weak in Aries. Saturn applies brakes. Aries is not the brakes. And so, you know, Saturn's not doing as much restriction as it usually can do. So, kind of the instruction here is there's courage needed. You know, Scorpio ruled by Mars. There's courage needed over clarity. You know, there could be some murky water up ahead. All right. And the sight's going to return, though, when you get to the lunar eclipse. And, you know, what's even crazier is, you know, when we get to nakshatras, and like I said before, the original founding chart, the eclipse was in Uttara Bhadrapada, which is the deep serpent of the depths. And this is mirrored later now with this Ashlesha eclipse, you know, the coiled serpent. So there is this serpent kind of imagery across the whole thread of this sorrow cycle. So this shadow over the crown, it's kind of, I'm not saying that the throne's going to empty, okay? Now, obviously, K2 is a dissolving energy. You know, I kind of put this imagery on this graphic here of, you know, someone sitting on the throne, and there's like this dissolving radiance, right? Now, so again, I'm not saying that a throne's going to empty, metaphorically speaking. But this is where the shadow falls onto. Okay, so it's a measurement, you know, not necessarily like an opinion of any kind, but it's a measurement of where the shadow is going to hit, not just individually, but collectively. So if we go back to this chart, I'm not going to put these other two charts up, but I just want to bring them up. Donald Trump's chart. All right, he's the most famous Leo rising figurehead that we've had in a long, long time. And so this stellium of planets that's in Leo for this eclipse is basically going to land. I mean, the south node itself, K2, is going to land within 10 arc minutes. That's within 1 degree of his exact ascendant, of Trump's ascendant. And what's the ascendant mean in astrology? It's us. It's how we show up physically to our life. It's our energy. It's just kind of how we show up, our persona. And I mean, that's not just close. I mean, that's contact. And then Jupiter in Leo is within 0.5 degree of his natal Pluto. So something is going to happen. I don't know what. I have no idea. I don't know, you know, I am not on one side of the fence or the other about which side you should be on about who he is and what he represents. That's not what this is about. Okay, but, you know, he is the authority figure right now. Whether we like it or not, he is. And so that's one piece of this. And then you have the United States chart, July 4, 1776 in Philadelphia. And, you know, the big chart that's used is called the Sibley chart. And Saturn in Aries, right here on the eclipse, it's squaring the U.S. sun in Cancer all season long, this whole eclipse season. So this is the executive authority of the country under a load test. And then Rahu over here in Aquarius is applying to the U.S. moon, which is, you know, again, in the house of, in the sign of the common people, Aquarius. And it's amplifying. Okay, it's amplifying the populace. And then you've got Neptune in the sky squaring the nation's Venus, which is kind of like fog over, things like money and the things that people feel like they have that's worthy of something to trade and exchange with others. And then the other big thing is Mars over here in Cancer that's, kind of just cruised in. It's crossing the US sun while it's squaring Saturn. And that's from August 31st to September 2nd. So really, there's a lot of force meeting walls here, right on the executive degrees of the US chart. So, kind of after an eclipse, what's going to fall away, just know that it was already hollow to begin with. We've been watching things going on since February. We've been watching things develop, things that started and initiated, like the Iran conflict. We've been watching what's going on in Russia and Ukraine even, and things that are happening all over the world. And I can tell you that whatever's falling away is hollow. It is meant to dissolve. It is meant to break apart. And whatever is going to last is what is really what's real. So, true power doesn't disappear, it kind of, it migrates, it moves, right? And with a lot of this being in Aquarius, there's this kind of leaderless momentum in August. And again, it's not necessarily chaos. It's just that the center of gravity is moving. So if you think about the dissolving of the crown or the shadow on the crown, it's the center of gravity of power is moving to the people. Is kind of how I see it. And so, when we get to this second eclipse, we're going to talk about this on August 15th. We'll be talking 3 days after that first eclipse, and we'll go through the diagnosis of it together. And just as a sneak preview, this imagery that I used here, it's kind of spot on. It's like, what the shadow's going to remove, the second one's going to flood in. The second eclipse is going to flood in what it all means. I've been talking a lot. Are you still there? There she is.
I'm here.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure.
Yeah, I was sitting here in you just left me in the ominous part, and I'm like, okay, and then what is the shadow bringing in?
Yeah, no, we're good. Yeah, well, and again, what I don't, I'm not a Nostradamus, right? It's really hard to kind of predict exactly what's going to happen, right? I made the mistake of trying to do that back in February, March, and I thought some pretty loud things were going to happen in February, March. And they weren't as loud as I thought, but they were subtle and significant, and they are still playing out, and they will play out for years. So it's I think it'll be more interesting to kind of look at it 3 days later and see what's transpired. So
yeah, I am excited for the timing of that for sure.
For sure. So where does this land for you? Right? Where is this happening individually for people? So here's the thing. Most eclipses, they only really speak to like a third of the zodiac directly, right? When astrologers talk like, oh, how does this eclipse affect you? Clearly, if the eclipse is happening right on, a big place in your chart where your sun is, where your moon is, whatever, all right, it's going to affect those people. And then usually you talk about the opposing sign, and then you talk about the squares, where the big friction is. Now, this one, these two eclipses, there's something for everybody, okay? Because they hit all the 12 signs at some sign level. And most eclipse seasons don't do that. And so it's going to do this through three separate measurable configurations. right? So we have the solar axis itself of the eclipse, and then the cross of that, the squares, okay? And then you're going to get the lunar axis, which is the next one, the next eclipse, and then the cardinal squares of that. So yeah, everyone has a house that's going to get hit by this eclipse. We all know that. You know, it doesn't, even if you don't have planets right where the eclipse is, that eclipse is happening in some house of your chart. And a house is a certain area of life, certain themes of life. Okay. So here's the mechanics first. So the first eclipse, Leo and Aquarius, that's direct contact. So if you've got like the sun, the moon, the rising sign, or any planets there, especially around 20 degrees, this season is definitely personally addressed to you. Okay. So Leo is, you know, a role that you've been performing, you know, is really up for release at this point. And so what kind of leaves your life, honestly, was already finished to begin with. Now, if you've got stuff in Aquarius, at least, even if you have stuff in Leo, but that Rahu energy is going to pull that energy, that whatever's leaving, it's going to pull you towards a new network, some new opportunity, some new grouping, some new collective of some kind. Okay, but the trap on both sides of this is that you don't want to white knuckle this old skin that needs to be shed. You need to let go. Okay. Now, the second lane would be the Taurus Scorpio. Okay, those are the squares. Those are the people that are going to get pressure tested. Okay, so the eclipse is squaring the important parts of your chart there. And again, the closer it is to 20 degrees, the more pressure there will be. Now, it may not be a removal like it is on the Leo Aquarius line, but it's a stress test on really kind of what's gotten too rigid in your life. And so how you survive August is going to be by bending. Okay, be the tree. You know, in the wind, don't snap, but bend and move with it. All right. So lane 3 is basically Virgo and Pisces. Okay, so that's the flood axis. So that previous image that I had right here, okay, that's the flood that we're talking about. That's the second eclipse. So if you have planets in Virgo or Pisces, that's your moment. Okay, so what's Virgo? Virgo's workload, health, discipline, logistics, all that's going to hit saturation points. So you kind of want to ease your load before you get to the eclipse where it forces you to pause or do something else. Okay. With Pisces is always about emotional overload, being the dreamy. Okay. A pulling to retreat. It's a natural 12th house of isolation and solitude. And let me go to my cave. You need to honor that. And the gift about all this is that the Cazimi, that Mercury Sun conjunction, is going to land in Virgo the day before. So if you've got, like, say, you know, Gemini, for example, Uranus in that sign is also squaring that eclipse on the 28th. So you would, you know, those people treat tech, communication, messaging, networks, treat any of that disruption as just like personal weather. So, you know, make sure you've got redundancies, do your backups, speak slower, do what you need to do with that mercurial energy. And then finally, you've got the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, all that have to do with the Mars-Saturn square at the same time of that eclipse. That's all yours to deal with. Okay. So there's a lot of building all month. And that square goes exact September 2nd. So Aries, like any Aries people on this podcast here, the wall you're pushing on, okay, is load bearing. So be careful. You need to test things before you shove too hard. Cancer people, check whether you're guarding something or you're just gripping it. Okay. Libra, Venus is going to be around there, and it's going to host this like relational recalibration. Okay. In your sign. And there's going to be Saturn opposing Venus at that time, August 21st to 22nd. There's like a reality check date there. And then Capricorn, those authority structures, okay, the results and the performance that's going on in your life are going to be shaking, and they're going to be shaking above you. And it's not your job to hold all of it up. A lot of Capricorns feel that they've got to hold and perform all the way to the end. So just recognize what may not be your job and your responsibility to hold up. So what I would do is find out where Leo sits in your chart. Okay, that house, that's the room where the shadow's crossing. Okay, that's where the subtraction that's going to happen, potentially, that's where it's going to be personal. So if you want to know exact degrees and houses, if you need help with all that, if you need to know where this, this is all going to land for you specifically, that's usually where we, book a session, talk to me, talk to an astrologer, and make sure that you have some clarity, especially if things are building or things have been building, and there's clarity that's needed. So these are kind of like the overall kind of tips and tricks while we stand through this crossing of energy. So there's this 48-hour rule that I like to say: just delay any reactions to any of the noise that comes up during this eclipse. Don't be quick to judge. Don't be quick to act. Don't be quick to sever things. Don't be quick to yell and scream and fret about. Take 48 hours. Okay. Usually most things, that rule, like when you find something you want to buy, you kind of, you don't buy it yet. You put it somewhere and, put it on a 30-day calendar. And usually by the time 30 days is up, you usually know really whether you want it for sure or not. Okay. So this is just a quicker 48-hour rule. Okay. Usually something could evaporate in 48 hours. Sleep on it, whatever you have to do. The clarity checkpoint for the month is August 27th. And again, we'll bring this back up again next month too. That's the sharpest decision window of the whole season, from now until the end of August. So any contracts, restructurings, hard conversations that need to come up, hold for that if you can. Now, the big bedrock date is August 31st, that Jupiter trine Saturn. So after the shadow passes, the ground that remains by the time we get to the end of the month, that's the ground you're going to build on. So that's why I'm saying hold off on big decisions. Let things realize within, and don't project outwards too soon. Don't try to rescue what this eclipse season is dissolving. If holding something together requires this constant force, this white knuckle grip, this I'm on the river or the continuum of life and I have to row over here, and you're just exhausting yourself. Okay. That is the diagnosis. So redirect the energy to what stands on its own. So just in conclusion here, The shadow is going to cross on the 12th. We're going to be back on the 15th to go through it all. And then we're going to find out together, what it all touched. So, and by the way, I am finishing up my analog newsletter, the Resonance Papers, for August to be shipped, before August hits. And there's going to be a ton more detail in there to help out. So if you want in on that, I'm sure there's a link somewhere, or we'll get some link somewhere.
It's in the QR code.
Oh yeah, the QR code. Yes. So I will probably be shipping that on Monday. It's an analog newsletter. It comes to your mailbox. So if you miss the shipment, you miss it. So if you're going to sign up or subscribe, do it over the next, 24, 48 hours. So that's kind of the overarching about the whole situation. So I don't know if there's any questions or anything like that, but
there are, but mine's first.
What'd you say?
I said there are questions, but mine's first.
Okay.
I have a little bit of terrified news for myself that I just found out that I'm a 20-degree Leo rising.
You're 23 degrees Leo rising?
20
degrees Leo rising.
Yeah, I just found out right this moment, and I'm scared.
So you share the same ascendant as Trump?
Yeah.
Okay. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see the parallels.
I am also curious because, so I'm thinking about in 2008, for me personally, it was a time where I was getting my life back together and like paying down the debts of my first chapter as I moved into my second chapter, and doors were opening. It was the possibility that I could move to New York from Atlanta, became an international flight attendant. My life changed. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see what those parallels. So for me, 2008, I didn't really remember because I was already the recession. I was living in the airport.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of parallel and similar to me too. I was definitely at a place of rebuilding after everything had been lost. Everything had been lost at the time. And so this time around, again, it's the maturing of that energy. Did you learn your lessons the first time around? And that makes you more resilient. That makes you stronger. That makes you wiser this time around.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all know with this academy that you've built, I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
And so
it's only starting.
So if there's anything that dissolves, that's what's hollow. And it's okay to let it go. And no huge decisions until you get to the end of the month. And it's like, okay, now I know what's left. Now I know what to build on.
It definitely scares me because then I just also discovered that my Mars is 20 degrees in Aquarius. That seems important.
So that's your 7th house.
Yeah.
So 7th house is about relationships, how you connect to others. And so that could be personal or professional. So yeah, think about, I mean, everybody's going to go through something. And so how will you relate and connect to the people in your life as they're going through the same types of things? And how are they reacting or responding? And then how are you going to not react and respond instead from a place of groundedness and centeredness? Yeah. And again, Mars is about taking action. And this is something too that I've learned recently. Mars is not always used in our chart. We use Mercury all the time. We use Venus all the time. Okay. The sun all the time, the moon all the time, but Mars is usually saved for emergencies or perceived emergencies of survival I need to get this done. I need to act. I need to make something happen to survive. And so the key here then is clarity for you when it comes to these relationships and these connections of, is this really that urgent? Is this a moment of survival for sure? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I
Yeah.
love all the for everyone too. And what's the signs that it's not touching?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's touching pretty much everything between the two. The fact that the two eclipses 2 weeks apart are kind of in two different signs, right? So even though Ketu and Rahu moved into Leo and Aquarius, you can still have an eclipse where they're not exactly conjunct the nodes. They can be within, I think it's 12 degrees. So by the time we get into past the middle of August, that's when the sun goes into Virgo. And so at that point, when we get to the full moon and have the lunar eclipse, the moon will be in Pisces and the sun will be in Virgo versus it being a Leo Aquarius eclipse 14 days before. So that's what I was saying. Like it's affecting every sign, honestly, if you think about it.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. Okay. We have a question from the audience. And I'm sorry, Deb, that I went before you because I know she was waiting since early this morning to write her question.
So about the Aquarius Leo null axis at the end of the month, how will it affect folks with both of those signs as a major point in their chart? Sun and Aquarius. So honestly, we kind of talked about this with your chart, but now, so yours was a rising sign, 7th house, and a Mars situation. Hers is Sun in Aquarius, Moon in Leo. Okay. So, Sun in Aquarius is interesting that there's a lot of detachment that the Aquarius Sun people have. There's a lot of awareness and knowledge and intelligence that inspires them to be a certain way, but Saturn the ruler restricts a lot of the sun's radiance and brilliance to a lot of times, to where a lot of times it comes off as aloofness with people, or Aquarius people are kind of have that sense of detachment, right? And so the key here with just that, and even the moon in Leo at this point, moons are great in Leo. Moon and sun are friends, so moon is delighted in Leo. There's a moon gets a lot of nourishment and attention in Leo. So it really depends on what are the degrees and what house structure is it for you. So the eclipse is almost the reverse on the 14th for Deb here. So depending on the degrees and how close her sun is to the 20-degree axis, that's going to be really how intense it is. And sun has a lot to do with what we're inspired to do in our life, where we get our inspiration, what we're inspired to go out and do, what kind of kingdom do we want to go out and build in our life. And so depending on what that house is for her, that's usually the area of life that brings inspiration, that is how our kingdoms are built from. So this eclipse, in a sense, for her, it's an opposition. The sun's in Leo, her sun's in Aquarius. And so the eclipse is almost in the 7th house from her sun. So there could be a tension, a push and pull between maybe others in her life that need to build something or inspire to do something that might conflict or have some tension between what she's trying to do in her life. And then, when it comes to the moon is how we see our reflections in others and how we adapt and how we get our needs met. And so again, depending on what house that is for her, that realm will have a shadow cast upon it. And again, that's not a bad thing. Shadows being cast is not a bad thing. It is just a shift in the light. So it's a shift in perception.
Which does sound scary sometimes.
Well, in a sense, there's definitely a depth to it, because Rahu and Ketu, that it's a destined, it's fate and destiny kind of energy. When there are eclipses in history, those are when nations rise and fall. Those are when
Yeah.
leaders rise and fall. Those are when wars are won or lost, or battles are won or lost. And look at what's happening around the world right now. I mean, if you're paying attention to the day-to-day over there in the Persian Gulf, it is lighting up right now. It is escalating into full-scale conflict. And it's not just the US and Iran. It's all those Gulf states. And even Pakistan's getting pissed off because they have an agreement with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is getting hit right now. And then you have the Russia-Ukraine thing. I mean, China and Russia just had a huge falling out from a pipeline deal. And China is literally preparing for a coup of Putin officially. So things are getting desperate. Things are escalating. And we are just walking into this eclipse season.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be really interesting to see what the shadow casts on all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the parts of the illusion fading away, specifically about financial things, because it's all tied to money. When we really look at it, all organizational structures follow the money. So I think that's an interesting perspective. And it's interesting to see how many people are all tied together and how many stories are all connecting behind the scenes that are finally coming out, that stories that people you wouldn't have connected.
For sure. You know, and money is a big part of this too. We're finding out where all the money's been flowing. Well, you know, that was something that happened the other day. There was this big shipment to through Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and it was all revealed in these tankers that there was a bunch of arms being shipped from Iran into so I mean, we're finding out where money's being sent. We're finding, you know, show me the money, follow the money trails, and it's happening everywhere around the world right now.
Yeah.
You know, one big move was all the oligarchs in Russia are freaking out right now, and they're moving their yachts over to Turkey right now, because, including Putin, like, they're all freaking out and harboring their money, no pun intended.
Wow, how fascinating. It's just wow.
Yeah, the symbolisms are ripe right now.
Yeah, it's interesting to have like a perspective of being able to sit at home and watch some of the world stuff. It's like the seat that we get that we never had before to have access to like watch in whatever is time, real time. But it's fascinating.
Well, and I think it's tomorrow is the final World Cup match between Spain and Argentina.
Oh,
you know, Messi's probably his last game. You know, this famous soccer player. And, you know, Argentina won last time. I think it's 4 years ago. And so, you know, there's so many distractions that are able to pull our attention away from what's really happening.
Yeah.
You know? And so, just, you know, take that into consideration too, that take enough time tomorrow on this amazing once in human history configuration that's sacredly geometrically perfect, and feel into that and really take some time to know what's distracting you from what's real.
Good advice. Advice in general, and really good advice for what's coming. And oh gosh, wow. I know that I plan on waking up in the flat tomorrow and meditating. So I am taking your advice.
Yeah, tap in for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Deb said she's going to check out the houses in her chart, and she said thank you.
Oh yeah. You know what? I might have her stuff, I think. Let me check.
What a treat.
I do. Look at that.
There you go, Deb.
So it's her 5th house and 11th house axis. And she's got Mercury retrograde as well, within 5 degrees of her sun. And so her sun is on the 23 degrees. So it's within 3 degrees of the nodal of the eclipse axis. So yeah, so she'll be feeling it. And 5th house Fifth house is a Dharma house. It's what is our truth? And it's the house of joy, self-expression, creativity, fun, romance. It's fifth house is a great house. It's a trinal
Okay.
house.
Also, the craziest part is Deb's in the challenge with me, and that the week of August to 9, the week of that energy, our theme is joy.
Can't make this shit up.
You can't. It's almost like we planned it.
Well, and so really with Rahu being right there, I mean, it's still out of orb a bit from her sun, but man, Rahu's getting real close to her Mercury. So there is something about her being able to experiment and try and communicate and be curious about, how do I express myself? How do I express this new truth about myself that's coming forward these days? And with the sun there, what's my authority in this? What's my kingdom about? I keep bringing those terms up because they're huge. And then the 11th house, where this eclipse for her, where the eclipse is happening, the moon there is at 8 degrees, so it's pretty far off from a lot of this eclipse energy. But the 11th house is about our dreams, our aspirations. It's about, what do I get out of life? And so the eclipse is probably going to do a lot of revealing in that realm for her. Yeah.
All right.
Pretty cool. We have the chart on hand.
I love that. And that's what happens when you're part of our community.
That's right.
Things like that. Amazing. Wow. Okay. Well, I am already you've left us like breadcrumbs for the next one. I'm already ready. But also a little nervous. A little nervous. I've got my journal out, my grounding mat. I've got a comfy blanket, some snacks.
Keep the sage nearby, whatever you got to do.
Yeah, it sounds like it. We're all going to have to be slower to react. And
for sure.
Grace, compassion, and joy. There it is built into at least the Academy platform. So
I mean, the key here is just take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. That's the first thing. Put the oxygen mask on yourself first. When you get on when there's a problem on the plane, don't worry about everybody else right now. Don't worry about what's going on in the world right now. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all we got for tonight. And thank you, Tom, and thank you for everyone watching. And I will see you guys next month.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, everyone.
Thank you for joining us this evening. We bridge the gap between what the world often keeps separate, logic and light, and spirit and science. We welcome everyone to come as you are and invite you to become the hero you want to become through educational tools and community connection. We offer tools, teachings, and community to help you remember who you are. This includes live shows, workshops, nutrition and wellness, and exclusive member perks. Logic leads us, light guides us, community connects us. Check out our TV Digest channel guide on All TV. Catch your favorite show, live stream, or find a new favorite show to add to your notifications. We are always adding new standalone episodes and series. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. Find us online on our website and all major social media platforms at Academy of Logic and Light. Click the link in bio to join our community. We hope to see you again soon, either here or on your hero's journey.